all of this is part of a project, and this is why we have the three projects. CSETI, which is the Universal Diplomatic Training Program, Disclosure Project to disclose the top secret witnesses and documents and information that prove that these projects are real and are going on within classified programs. And then, of course, the OrionProject.org that's working to identify scientists and technologies to bring forward that would replace the current paradigm of oil and centralized utilities and burning coal and digging up coal and nuclear power, which, by the way, those of you who think nuclear power is an advanced technology, I want to remind you, all a nuclear power plant is a old-fashioned 1800s steam boiler that it heats up water and turns a steam turbine, chug, 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 like an old railroad chugging along. The only difference is that the heat is coming from splitting an atom, which is called fission, and it causes enormous amounts of radioactive waste. And so basically we're creating all this radioactive waste and radiation, which I'm sure is absolutely horrific. And the ETs we know are monitoring this because they're concerned about what we're doing to the genetics of this planet. The total genetic footprint of the planet is really being harmed by all this radiation and chemical pollution. But all you're really doing with a nuclear power plant is heating up water and turning a steam turbine. I mean, it's not any more advanced than that. So, people who think that that's a really advanced physics solution to the energy problem need to have their heads examined. It is not. It's a very crude and very dangerous way of getting energy, particularly compared to the hyperdimensional, if you will, physics that deal with getting energy from the fabric of space-time. So I think that these projects, a lot of people don't understand how they're connected, but they're intimately connected because it has to do with the human future and creating a transformative civilization on this planet that enables us to, number one, live on this planet without destroying it, eliminate poverty and the roots of war and the haves and the have-nots, create a truly sustainable long-term civilization that can be at peace, that can then go amongst the stars in peace. Now, there are very powerful interests that want to be sure that we continue to have warfare. And this is why the whole ET issue has been couched by Hollywood and the big movie makers and studios and people like Stephen Hawking and others who are trying to say, oh, well, there's a threat out there and we can't possibly make contact. And if we do make contact, they're going to come here to Earth and try to mine our resources here and colonize the Earth, which is the most childish and ridiculous anthropocentric projection I've ever heard. Now, imagine this. You're an interstellar civilization capable of interstellar travel faster than the speed of light. You have all these advanced technologies, and you're going to come to an armed camp like Earth with 7 billion people armed to the teeth with tens of thousands of nuclear weapons aimed at each other? I don't think so. I mean, when there are worlds out there that are just like Earth was a few 100 million years ago with life and minerals and forests and whatever there is that would have no civilization on them at all. Why would you come to Earth? So there's this ridiculous sort of paranoid view that people like Stephen Hawking and the people at Lockheed Martin, there are a couple scientists who recently wrote a book in the last few years about, how there's going to be a threat from outer space. And the reality is that we're the problem, and we're the threat, and we're the ones that need to get on another sort of transformative page here in a direction that we have not been doing for the last 100 years that we should have been, and that is creating a peaceful world, bringing out these hidden sciences and technologies, and going out into space peacefully. And what we're going to find, what CSETI has found, I mean, if you come on these expeditions, you'll see that when people are on the same page about approaching this with a new mind, a new consciousness, the ETs appear even when we're being harassed with jet fighters flying overhead and helicopters and police that will try, soldiers that will drive in up on the site with their lights off and try to sort of intimidate what we're doing. And this has all happened in England. I mean, Linda, you can tell them what happened a few times when we had some. Remember that time that huge craft that looked like a giant sun appeared?
Oh yeah,
Why don't you tell that story? It's a great example of what happens.
Oh, that was just amazing. And we were up on, before we even got to Woodborough Hill, we saw it one night on Woodborough Hill, the very first night we were in England in, I think it was 98. Yeah, it was 98. It was the very first night we were out in the Vale of Pewsey, and over this ridge rose this. It looked like it was way bigger than like a setting sun, but it bobbed up over the ridge, which, by the way, was not in the west where the sun would set anyway, but it bobbed. It was already dark. It bobbed up and went down and up and down again. And within 30 seconds, there were jets and helicopters flying over in the area to suppress this giant craft that had shown itself to us. And then it was just a couple nights later, we were up on top of Woodborough Hill again, and we had just gotten up there, in fact, and in a different direction, over a different ridge, this same craft, only it appeared even larger this time, and it was the orangey color of a setting sun, but it was the size of maybe a 50-cent piece held at arm's length, popped up over another ridge, down, then up again, and then dissolved in midair. And again, within 30 seconds, there were jets, there were helicopters, and literally they even dropped flares, so later on they could say it was just us having, exercises dropping flares.
Yes, and a number of people saw this, including some people who had hiked up on Woodborough Hill, weren't part of our team,
right,
who saw it, and they were going, "Oh my God, did you see that?" I said, "Yes, we see this sort of thing a lot." And it was a massive craft. What's interesting, though, is that, obviously there are space reconnaissance and ground-based reconnaissance programs that detect these ET objects when they appear. And there has been this sort of suppression activity, but it doesn't really stop anything. Because if you go into a deeper level of the cosmology, you understand the transdimensional aspects, and that's where you can have an event happen like that did with this being that came in the bay window in England, or that appeared at Joshua Tree in November, this past November, where it's beyond linear space-time and yet can be seen and imaged by our cameras and often seen with the naked eye, but it's beyond a physical system to suppress it. And I think that this is what's interesting, is that eventually, when we get to a point where these classified military programs are under the control of the president or under the control of the prime minister of England, which right now they're not, by the way, we would be able to do this with greater freedom. Unfortunately, there is a sort of a secret government program that isn't under the control of the chain of command, and we've been able to prove this. It certainly is not something that the president controls, that have assets that are designed to detect these objects and also suppress contact. But it doesn't happen in a fail-safe way for them. They don't have total control, because the extraterrestrial civilizations are so much more evolved than that. And however, for us to appreciate that, we have to evolve. We have to evolve to an understanding of the full spectrum of reality that goes from the ancient Vedic concepts that all this is that all of everything that exists is actually consciousness resonating and phasing at whatever frequency, even if it's a star or a plant or a tree or what have you, that everything is awake. And that within that understanding, you have multiple levels of transdimensional reality that interstellar civilizations that dematerialize and rematerialize are in full control of and in touch with. And it's very powerful. And once you understand that, then you can understand how contact can proceed even in the current state of the world, which is admittedly highly dysfunctional.